Hey, hey, welcome to another episode. I am Dagny.
And I'm Damali.
And in this episode, we want to share and discuss with you our feedback, insight, analysis of the movie Woman King. Now, before we go any further, just to let you know, if you have not seen it or you didn't want spoilers, you should probably stop this episode, go to another episode of our podcast series, and come back another time.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, there's your spoiler alert. All right. We did it first at the beginning. All right. Because now we're going to continue and just spoil everything. All right.
Yes.
So we saw Woman King in theaters back when it came out, which now will be almost, is it 2 or 3 years now, I believe? I think it was 2022. I think it was 2022 that it came out.
Yes, it was.
So, yeah. So we watched it together in theaters. We actually watched it in Accra, Ghana, which made it even more special, of course. And we had quite a lot of things to discuss. What's funny is that this is a topic that we decided like, oh my goodness, at that time we were preparing our podcast and that was on our list of we definitely want to discuss this. Here we are 3 years later, we're finally discussing it. Okay, all right. So what we wanted to hold your hand and walk through in this episode is what aspects of the movie we felt could have been better, what aspects of the movie we did also enjoy or appreciated. And then later, broaden the scope, as we always do, on these types of films when it comes to films that want to portray or highlight African or Black history, icons, legends, stories, and what we need more of or what we would like to see more of, regardless if it's coming from Hollywood or another film industry altogether. Okay, so that's what we're getting into. So to start, we're going to do this discussion believing you've already seen the movie. So we're not here to reiterate the story at all, actually, but we are going to bring and sprinkle in some historical facts because they're needed for the discussion. All right, so Woman King. Damali. We're just going to keep it 100.
Yes.
From the jump, from the top. Can you please share with us what, in a nutshell, what was your takeaway from watching Woman King? From the build up to it? Because due to that build up is the reason why we were excited to even go and pay a ticket to watch it in theaters instead of waiting later on. What was your takeaway to start?
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, when we first heard about this movie, we were like, whoa, what the heck? What's going on here? And Viola Davis was in it, right? And she's been getting a lot of traction, hearing a lot about her and things like that. And we're like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. I don't know if I had seen James Bond by then, because I remember that there's also a British actress that was in it as well that I recognized. Anyway, so when I first watched it, I don't think I knew about the full history before I watched it. So going into it was kind of a little bit different. I don't remember if Dagny had mentioned some thoughts about it before or after the movie, but and I think, I don't know if later I also heard that I think Lupita Nyong'o did a documentary on the real story that happened. Because I don't know if they had asked her to be in the movie or I don't know what, but I don't know if she was like, no, because this is not the true stuff going on. But at the time when we watched it, it did have that kind of, it's supposed to be like this woman power thing. You have these like very powerful women and you see different types of women, right? You see the really strong ones that fight, and then you have the really gorgeous, beautiful ones. So you're seeing like the soft and the harder side, I guess, of women. And then having like, even though the man is the king, his, the women warriors or the Amazons are the ones that are the strong ones fighting and taking control. And the way the movie was portrayed was very much a like, they're the good guys and they're fighting and all of that stuff. So I kind of, before I knew the true story, I was like, okay, cool. I have like a woman power thing going. I like it. Black people and being strong and not afraid to look strong, or it's kind of like you get to see all of these different emotions, right? Like of women who are not afraid to look strong or pretty or not so pretty or vulnerable or things like that. And I was like, oh wow, okay, showing different levels to it. But even when I didn't know the full history, I did have some issues with it already. And I remember we like talked, Daggy and I went in and discuss this movie after, because we're like, what is this? So even though I like the strong feminine stuff, I also was like, okay, so the love story, I don't know what that was. I don't know if I felt okay about that. I feel like the way it was portrayed was kind of odd to me, and it was strange that this guy, like, he said, oh, and then they tried to do first, okay, yeah, he had chest and abs. I'm aware of that, like, nice eye candy, but it's kind of like, what else do you do here? Like, I don't care about your abs if there's nothing else that you're doing here. You know what I mean? Because he was like I think it was like his mom was Dahomey or something. So they tried to use that as a way to connect him to the main girl. And I think the main girl's name was Nawe. And I think Viola Davis was Naniska. And then there's a whole thing about how Naniska and Nawe are actually related. We didn't know, whatever. So, and they tried to do that. Sad things happen. We see the whole slave trade thing go on. And which and there were some plot holes too that I noticed, that things that didn't really connect, or characters ending up in places which didn't really make sense. And then, like, even the thing that she, like, Nawe had in her back, it was just like some things were kind of odd to me. But overall, I did, before I knew the history, I did like the woman power thing. I liked that it was a different kind of movie. I like that they were trying to be, instead of just like speaking in their usual accents, they did put work in to sound like how people would sound in a certain part of, I think it's in West Africa. I believe that's where there it is. And so and I mean, some of the accents, I think, I don't know, they could have been better. I'd have to ask people that are actually from there, like, is this really how the accent is, kind of thing. But they try their best with the different accents and trying to show some cultural stuff about Africa and trying to do that. So I think they were trying to be sensitive in that way. So I noticed that, and I appreciated that. And yeah, and it did seem like it was cool for us to go in theaters, because that's where the money comes from, right? If you actually go to the theater to watch it. And yeah, and I think and it was very different kind of role, I guess, for Viola Davis as well. So that was interesting to see her in that role and doing that. And if it made people want to come to Africa, cool. You know what I mean? Like, if it made you curious about it and want to learn more about like a different country or different history, that's cool too. And also, I don't think I knew about Dahomey before, really. I don't know if it's something that I knew previously. So I guess it's a new, even if the history in the movie maybe was not like, all accurate, it made me look, oh, Dahomey, some other part of history I didn't know, kind of thing. And obviously, obviously we have roots in Africa, so like it makes sense to want to know about that. So yeah, so overall, before I knew that, and then also finding out that the director was female, so a lot of like female woman power stuff going on. I'm a female, makes sense, right? And so yeah, so that I think that was the first thought I had, where yes, there are plot holes, yes, some things could have been better, some things were weird, but overall I liked the feminine power thing before I knew like the history behind it. And then of course when I do find out the history about it, I'm like, oh, they took a lot of creative license, but that's where I'll stop there for how I felt. And what about you, Dagny? What was your first takeaway when very first time you watched it, before we get into deeper stuff?
Right. I think for me, it was a mixed bag of goodies. I'll start with the nicer things. I think I felt one, the timing of the movie was interesting for me, because it was like it was later in 2022. And at that time, I was gearing up for early 2023. I was going to be visiting Benin, which is where the Dahomey, part of the Dahomey kingdom was originally. And they have this Amazon warrior kingdom woman king statue there. So it was already like, oh, wow, this is connected because I'm going to be going to the place itself. Cool. So I already knew a little bit of history, or a little bit of why these women warriors were important. I also, for something nice in terms of like what was in the film, I did appreciate certain details, even though they didn't. It's like there was so much that could have been explained more that they chose not to. Details like the wardrobe, the fact that the king was wearing silk or wearing certain materials, certain fabrics, which if it was explained, noting how powerful the kingdom was, because those fabrics are not indigenous to the place. So the certain dyes and jewels that they were wearing shows that their kingdom is conquering other people and doing some major trade with other parts of the world. I felt like there was, it was like almost that some research had been done for the movie, because there were a lot of details that showed that, like, no, you really tried to understand the magnitude of what this kingdom was. So that those are some nice things, right? And I do feel that, like, yes, the woman warriors, their fight scenes and stuff, they obviously really trained for it. We haven't seen a movie like that in a while for Hollywood, of having women fighting like that are not just Charlie's Angels, or fighting like that in a way that's still for the male gaze or still for fun or comic relief. This was like, no, these are real warriors taking people out, like out completely and moving on, like just out. And so that was refreshing, because we haven't seen that in a while. And also the interactions where they're not necessarily enslaved to the king. They even they're still respectful, but the king, their interactions of how they were trying to guide or give advice to the king of how do you deal with how the trade and the slavery industry was evolving at the time that they decided to have the story portrayed. So those are some nice things. The holes, or the things that I felt were lacking, or I felt they could have done more with, and I feel they had a responsibility to do more with, was one, and I guess this is part of what some would say, this is just part of Hollywood, that you really can't expect anything else because it's Hollywood. Where it felt like the major fight scenes and explosions are supposed to distract you from the holes in the story, and distract you from the fact that you actually are not telling true events. You have taken creative license to tell the story the way you want to portray the warriors the way you want to portray the women the way you want to. Not to say that the women did not have stories of their own and stuff, but because it's obvious they did research, I'm sure they could have found real accounts of the types of lives these women had went through and just portray those, instead of pretending there needs to be some really basic, banal love story that did not move the story in any shape or form, as well as the mother and daughter situation that, again, because they didn't really develop it, it just felt like, so you just needed something to cry about not because it was there's like a serious magnitude to it, because it's like the girl is a product of rape among the Africans themselves, and the type of force and the type of betrayal that's happening while the slave trade is just moving. But it was just skimmed over. And then this, again, just have this spike of emotion, and then boom, we're back to explosions and fighting. And again, it's like those sorts of things are fine for the Avengers, for Superman, for Mission Impossible, because it's just Hollywood style. You came to this movie to numb yourself with
Michael Bay comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. Of just to distract yourself with stuff that would never happen in real life. But choosing to take African history to do that, unfortunately, it just feels like that's not, that there's a certain level of respect or a certain level of homage or tribute that should cause us to not do that when it comes to these sorts of things. Like, would you do the same thing for a movie about Abraham Lincoln? Would you do the same thing about a movie about Joan of Arc? Of let's take creative license and make it seem like Abraham Lincoln loved to break dance, and let's just do all this fighting and forget and just, skim over the fact he was president. Like, no, Hollywood wouldn't do that. Same with Joan of Arc, the movie that they did. I don't know. I have to look into how much of creative license did they use and how much of it was facts. But I'm not sure if they went as all the way to the other deep end the way they did with this movie. So we will now discuss further the types of holes that were in it. But I just felt like there was so much with the buildup that it had, where this was like supposed to be a movie that's right up there with Black Panther. As in this is Hollywood finally doing movies that bring Black history or African history that actually respect it. The first time it's a movie that is not just Black people being slaves, or Black people being only certain categories. It's either slaves or you're incarcerated. That's it. So this was supposed to be, Hollywood is changing. And again, like you noted, that the director is a Black woman, the majority of the production team and crew, Black women. Like, you insist on pushing that. So the PR for it looks like, this is something we really need to support. So coming away from it and then even learning more about the history and taking note that, like, is it really enough which caused the question, which we will try and answer in this episode. Is representation so important that it sacrifices the truth, or sacrifices authenticity, or sacrifices responsibility and accountability, all for the sake of representation? That's a question we will, reflect on and take bits and pieces of in this episode. But to start, that was my mixed takeaway from the movie.
Okay, yes, yeah. I definitely I like what you said about how like they did do the research, but it just seems they left things out. Kind of thing. Like they did stuff, and because you can tell that they did look into it. I mean, I remember watching some interviews, and the director, the female director that did, I've forgotten her name now, but she was saying how she looked up this store and she found out about these Dahomey wards, and she was like, oh wow, this sounds this is a really cool store. I want to do this kind of thing. And I'm sure like when she first found out about it, she probably didn't know like the full history yet. And she's like, and maybe she thought, oh, well, this is the kind of story I want to write. And then as she found out more information, she's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. Let's do it different. It would be interesting to see them. I don't know if they ever kind of talked about that, because then that would get in the way of their promotions, I guess. But I will say that because then it kind of makes it. It falls flat, right? Because all the interviews, they talk about like the strength of the movie, and especially like Viola Davis and all of that, and the sexual assault survivor, and the bonds and all of this stuff. But like when you hear the truth about that, it makes it kind of hollow a bit. And then even without the truth, it was kind of hollow. Like they tried to make, like, honestly, one of the most like the one bonds that really touched me the most was, I think it was Azogi. I think that was the one that, spoiler alert, ends up dying. But anyway, Azogi and Nawe, the main girl. She was the first one that she met from Dahomey, I think, and she's the one with the nails, where she just uses her nails and she just like gets into people's eyes. And she was such a badass, right? And she was the main one that helped with that. Honestly, I feel like Nawe and Azogi's bond, and also Naniska and I forgot the name of the other. She's very tall. She's from Uganda. She's very tall and
the tall
thin.
one. Yes, yeah.
The tall one, yes. That bond where the one where she asked her, like, she's the only one that knew that her child, don't tell me, like, to take her child away, whatever. That, honestly, both those bonds were stronger to me than Nawe and Naniska, the main girl, and then Viola Davis's character. And stronger than the guy, Malik, I think the name of the guy with the abs was, chest and abs, oh my god. And the Nawe. Like, yeah, the love story and the mother-daughter love story, I think, could have had more. It was kind of like, oh my god, this happened, and then and like there was no build-up. It's just like, oh, how interesting would it be if like a coincidence happens where the main character just happens to be the long lost daughter of Viola Davis. Like, okay, let's and then how she put something in her back, and like the things in your back, and you don't know. Like, I'm sorry. Like, what? Like, oh yeah, I just have like a bone. What was it? A bone or a nail in her back?
I think it was
and
a
she
tooth.
put it,
like a bone or a tooth
in her back, and you don't feel that.
Dagger,
like, how old?
Yeah.
Like, there's a dagger in her back, and she takes it out, and she's like, "Tell me, I know it's my daughter," and all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, oh. And the love story too, I mean, I think the love story is trying to be like, it reminds me of Disney, but like Disney did it better. Like, like, it's that whole kind of like, Pocahontas, I guess, like Cinderella, like, oh my gosh, like we're so different, but not, like that kind of thing, Sleeping Beauty style. But I just didn't like, it didn't make any sense. Like, why? And then his role, what is your role?
What
like
do you do?
Like, it just seems kind of useless. Like, he was just there with his chest and abs, but like, how are you helping her? Like, you're just there. And like, she was more, the main girl was more serious and made sense. Like, she's like wondering, what are you doing here, sir? Like, what's going on? But then it's just weird. And then like, I feel like you use like cheap, no offense, but like using cheap things to make it something, like being like, well, the bond is really a big deal because apparently his mom was from Dahomey. And like, we don't learn anything else about his mom. Like, you literally, like, I'm sorry. Like, literally, you're like, his mom is from Dahomey. We never hear about her. No one asks about her. No one finds some painting of her. Like, like, was she a big deal? Like, who was she? And then like, you're friends with a slave trader and you're surprised when your friend acts like a slave trader. Like, I don't know what's going on, So I just feel, and then to make it like, and then using, like the part when, remember, we're gonna have spoilers all over the place, so hopefully you've watched this movie, but the part when they're in the slave trade thing and he sees the main girl, Malik sees Nawe on the slave thing and he just freaks out. He's like, oh my God, why is she there? Just like freaking out. And I'm just like, I don't understand. Aren't you from I don't get it. Isn't your friend Portuguese? And he's all freaking out. And then like, he doesn't even help. Like, she gets like attacked and then her friend gets killed. So I'm like, what was the reason? Like, as Cardi B would say, what was the reason? You know what I mean? In that show that she was in. But yeah, so there are just parts like that where I didn't really get, whereas I felt it for Azogi, and like when Azogi died and Navi was crying, I felt that. Like, I don't know where that the main girl who's from South Africa, I don't know what she was thinking about, how she got to that emotional bit, but like that was like raw, man. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, oh, is she okay? Like, I need to go play, you know what I mean? I don't know how she felt after she did that scene. I feel like it probably was really tough. And like, crying, like, well, I mean, I guess I can compare it to like, I remember Viola Davis, they made fun of her when she was crying in like fences or the snot and boogers everywhere. That's some real crying right there. I don't know how they got there. I don't know what headspace she went in to get there, but I felt that. I was like, oh my gosh, like that hit me like, but Malik and Nawe, Niska and Nawe, I don't know. Niska and Naomi were a bit better than the whole love story, but I just feel like if you remove the love story, you wouldn't lose anything. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't really. So that was kind of that was a big issue there, where I was like, you're putting stuff in just to make it into something when you don't really. Why do we need that? Like, what is that? And yeah, that's kind of. I don't know what else I was going to say, but that's
That's fine. That's fine. So yeah, no, you brought up some very valid points. And yes. I feel I would add that there was so much lacking in character development. And yes, so much of wanting to fit characters into a very rigid black and white vibe when humans are not that. So the Africans who were helping, or the main ones who were doing the slave trade with the Portuguese during this moment of time, because it wasn't just the Portuguese who were doing slavery, but at this moment in time for the movie, you're primarily just trading with the Portuguese. And they had, they're wrapped in their different, they're always on horses, they're wrapped in the fabrics, they have these boots and everything, and they're just automatically the villain. But there was never any showcasing of how did they get to that point? Why are they doing this? Because obviously it's not that they feel good about selling their own people. No, right? Or is this the narrative you want? And this is where responsibility for me comes in, because this film is going to be shown in different places. Africans are going to be watching it to see, okay, Hollywood tried to do Africa again. Let's see what they did. When they already know that y'all don't get the accents right, y'all don't be casting Africans in the movie. They already have their list of complaints before even watching the movie. Then Black Americans also already, okay, Hollywood wants to do another Black history movie. What are they going to do? Are we always going to be the slave? What's going to happen? So this is where, if you were given the opportunity, and again, I'm like, I don't know if like maybe they did this, but then Hollywood directors were like, actually cut this, cut that. We're not going to give you the money unless you cut this and cut that. I don't know. But I felt like there should have been more backstory for each character. So the group of Africans who they are the ones who are collecting the people and because the Portuguese don't go into the jungle. These Africans are the ones who are going into the jungle, picking up the Africans and bringing them to the shore for the Portuguese to put them on the boat. What is their story? Why are they in this? What money are they getting from this? How did they end up being a part of the industry like this? And how do they feel about it? I'm sure the research that they did brought up some accounts of that. And then noting what do they get out of it? The fact that they're all wearing these leather boots obviously is through this transactions that you have these types of guns and these types of boots and you're wearing these sorts of things. But that was never there. It was just the music changes and all of a sudden they're the bad guy. Similar to, like you noted, how Disney makes it very simple. This is the villain, this is the hero. There's no in between at all. That should have come up. Then also the way when you would sometimes have, okay, the king and the warriors and they're talking and only once Viola Davis' character is like, the slavery thing is taking too many of our people. Why don't we do palm oil instead? Or why don't we do, some of our own indigenous materials instead of people? And for me, that was a poignant point that could have been expanded more to make it obvious of, do they understand how impactful this trade is or not? Like, were you trying to make it seem like the Dahomey actually think that the people that are being sold are the same value as palm nuts or diamonds? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you could just substitute the person for the palm nut and the Portuguese wouldn't notice. As in, because that's what it made it seem like, where I'm like, no, is that really the accounts that you researched? Is that really what they believed? Or did they understand that the people you are selling and pushing to the Portuguese are the people who are building the Portuguese empire and every other colonizer who came after the Portuguese? Do they understand like how valuable the people that they're selling are? But that conversation never happened. It was one 30-second scene and then boom, we moved to explosions and fighting again. So there was so much more because the accounts of who was doing the selling is still very fuzzy for people when it comes to African history, where some people are still to this day very angry, wanting to believe the story that Africans sold their own people, so you can't trust Africans. Or similar to the story that's trying in the movie of like, well, all white people were selling in slavery, so you can't trust any of them. So this is where our wonderful Malik comes in, and he had one job and he didn't do it, because there are accounts that there were some white people who were against the slave trade and tried, but obviously didn't try enough because they didn't stop it in time. There was also many Africans who were against the slave trade and also tried to stop it or prevent it. And in some respects, they were able to actually cause an issue for the trade, but it still wasn't enough because the colonizer would just bulldoze over them and continue the transactions. And so I feel like Malik had potential beyond the way he looks, right? Because I get it of like, he looks a certain way to showcase the fact of the way the mixture was creating people at that time. You have a lot of people look like that in Brazil, in Cape Verde, in all these different types of, in Portugal, you have that. But he also had no character development. Like, I don't know, in the 1600s, did you have an identity crisis because you look like that and you're in Portugal, you're a friend and nobody else in Portugal looks like that? And you don't even know the language, you don't know any of this stuff. Like, does that mean anything to you? Because throughout the movie, even though he claimed, he apparently knows the language, but is still trying and stuff, there wasn't enough of, are you actually trying to learn your mother's culture if you know that your mother was Dahomey? There also was a gap in, apparently his character works at some printing press that his dad owns. Why are you here, my guy? How did you end up on this boat? What are you doing here? Because it's not like he was a journalist. He wasn't taking photos or writing down accounts to come and report back about what's happening in Africa with the Portuguese coming back and forth. So why are you here? Like, this was just holiday with your friend who you know is a slave trader? Then why are you here? So I agree that he seemed just lost all the time, which means you're just taking up space, unfortunately. And then when there was a crucial point where you could have been useful, he didn't fight anybody. He didn't prevent any harm from happening. He just, again, was taking up space, pretending to be shocked about everything. And so one, that was annoying for all of us because we're like, bruh, what's the point of being mixed if you can't help anybody? But on the other hand, it might have been maybe he represents how people who were not in the slave trade were kind of lost in knowing how to even contribute or not. Because maybe if he was more vocal about, yo, we can't be doing this, the Portuguese could just killed him and left his body there, because who's going to stop you? Or the Dahomey would have done something to him too. I don't know. So I'm not sure if that is what they were trying to portray by having a very handsome man just being useless and lost. To portray that, well, actually, a lot of people who are not, because technically he has some privilege because he's half Portuguese, but also has some restrictions because you're half Dahomey. And is that what you are, like you're tied, you're restricted because of that? I don't know. So but then the additional thing of trying to pretend to have a love story that doesn't make any sense. And at the end, they have to sleep together as if so is she going to have some mixed baby or something? What was the point? Like, there are explosions happening outside and you need to have this love scene. Like, how does that make it didn't move the story at all. So that I was disappointed by, because like you noted, having films that the propaganda or PR around it is to show strong womanhood or strong women empowerment. I just feel like then they should have really boosted the bonds that actually made a difference in that woman's life. So similar to, like, to that character who, that bond with the main girl and that other girl had the most character development in the story, because at the beginning they hated each other. At the beginning, the original warrior was like, this girl is useless. How did she even get in? And the other one thought, like, I will prove to you because I know you hate me. And then at the end of it, noting like they were practically sisters. Like they would die for each other, which, as you noted, the girl who ends up dying, she didn't have to, but she took the bullet in order to save the other girl. That kind of bond among women is the representation that we need more of, about strong girls or strong women, as opposed to some random good-looking guy just lost, wants to just spend time with you. I'm sorry. Like, and not to mean like, oh my gosh, so there shouldn't be any man in the story. Like, yes, definitely. But due to how strong she was, their conversations could have had more depth. Because she was asking serious questions. Why are you here? What do you want? Like, who are you? Do you know who you are? But those conversations did not go any further than that at all. It was just like, oh, and then frolic in the jungle kind of thing. So that is where they could have done so much more about it. And that is where, again, we really do need to take responsibility of how we retell history. We can't constantly want to just fit people in certain narratives that benefit a few. And this is something that, unfortunately, Hollywood and US history in general does this a lot. We want to constantly retell US history, retell whatever thing that America was a part of in a way that favors one character. And that is a disservice when you have such a major, powerful propaganda machine like Hollywood. So when you have this opportunity, which again, that's why I'm saying that because it was within Hollywood, we do need to acknowledge that you got to answer to certain people if you're going to push a film in Hollywood and they're going to put money behind it. So we understand that it's possible the director wanted to do something different. Is it possible some other people in the crew really wanted to tell the real story, but because you did it within the construct of Hollywood, you had to agree to do certain things that maybe you didn't really want to do. Which, I mean, it is what it is. But this is where the double standards come in for certain demographics. When it comes to Black history and African history, so much of it has been destroyed, distorted, erased, brainwashed, that when you have the opportunity to bring it up, sometimes it feels like it's not a good enough excuse to be like, well, it's Hollywood, what do you expect? Or it's just a movie, what do you expect? It's like, for a lot of people, this is the first time they ever heard about the Dahomey warriors. This is the first time they ever knew that there was a group of women warriors in Africa who were badass like this. Why have we never heard of it? And we insist we want to Disneyfy them and make them our superheroes, which is very like American to do. But like, if you want to do that, you should have made them cartoons and made it very clear that you're just inspired by the Dahomey Kingdom and you wanted to create something that was feel good for people. Because when you contrast that to, like you noted, the documentary Lupita Nyong'o ended up doing around the same time, which I think she was approached to be in the film. I forget how she was approached, but yeah, right? But when you contrast that to the documentary she did, where people from the place told her that, like, no, they are still carrying bitterness and pain from what the Dahomey warriors did to their family. And these are from African to African. So it's a bit of it can come across as a little disrespectful, where Hollywood decides I'm just going to take up your story and completely change it to fit my narrative of wanting a very clean hero and a very clean villain, because our population could not possibly think beyond that. I think that's sad that Hollywood or any big film industries always want to assume that your audience has no brains, like you need to think for the audience kind of thing, instead of allowing the audience to digest really complex theories, which history is complex. It is not a clean hero and a clean villain. And so this was such an opportunity, because it is, and that is why I think it wasn't good of them to try and push it to be like, this is the next chapter like Black Panther, because they don't compare. Black Panther completely was not trying to be history. They made it very clear, this is fantasy, y'all. It was a comic book. It's someone's imagination, which is why everything's just inspired by Afrocentric, but we're not claiming it's that. So it's not fair to then compare that with Woman King, but you ended up making Woman King as if it was like a Black Panther movie, where it's just Africans in a somewhat African environment having fighting and explosions. When you really could have told a more complex story about a topic that is still very touchy for a lot of people. But I think more people are open to having the truth now about who really was the facilitators of this and how do people end up being a part of the slave trade in the first place.
Okay. Yeah. Those are I think there's 4 points about yeah. So for the Black Panther thing, and the thing is with Black Panther, it was much better with, it's probably because it's like it's from a big story. I don't know. It's just a better, like, you see more of, like, the female empowerment and the men and women working together, and like there's strength in different ways. Everyone shows their strength and bravery in different ways, and the relationships and bonds are better. Like, it's just it's just better. Like, it's just the way that it was dealt with was better, right? And then and back to the Woman King. Yeah, I don't know if is it okay, right, to doctor details and delete facts and do all of this just to create like a Black female empowerment film. Like, why? There's so many stories, like real stories of heroes and I'm surely of other people you could have talked about where it was a true story, right? And this also makes me think of why some people were kind of upset about, remember when we did the Black Square? I don't know if everyone remembers that during the BLM stuff, people were so annoyed by that. Like, I put a Black square to show that I'm with Black people. And some people were like, what does that do? The Black square is like Malik in this movie. What does that do? Like, but I did like what you said. Well, maybe Malik is a metaphor. I think we're giving the director a lot of credit for that. No offense, to be like, oh yeah, Malik is just a metaphor for the feeling of emotions of being lost and not knowing what to do about the straight slave trade. No. I'm not going to give them that. But he could be using that way in our way of looking at it. But yeah, and even though, yeah, at the end Malik had, all quiet, after the battle was done, I think he let the other Black people kill his friend or something. They like drowned him. He just kind of watched as they killed him, and that was that supposed to be? Yeah, that was his way of doing stuff. And I don't know if it's like okay, but yeah, we don't. Honestly, I didn't even remember the printing press thing. That's how useless they put that in. I don't remember him having a printing press. What are you talking about? Exactly. Like, they didn't talk about that. They didn't mention that. We don't know about the mother. How did the mother end up with his dad? Why don't we have that information? Like, where are you guys coming from? What is going on? So, and I don't think, and also it reminds me of, people had some quips about I think it was the last Avengers film. Spoiler alert. It was the last Avengers film where there's a scene where all of the women are walking together or something. And even though it's like a really cool camera shot, they don't do anything. Like, and then Captain Marvel is there and she still doesn't help in the way that she can. Like, I thought she was there to stop Thanos. So why is Iron Man dead? Spoiler alert. You know what I mean? Like, Captain Marvel is supposed to be like the strongest one in this stuff, right? and you have Captain Marvel and you have Wanda just there, Geke, with all their freaking power, and yet Thanos is there, and yet Iron Man is the one. And like, I thought that Wanda, and Scarlet Witch and Captain Marvel, aren't they like stronger than Iron Man? Like, aren't they more? But we have to do a thing because it's about Iron Man and his thing and whatever. Which I'm like, okay, and also because the actor didn't want to, Robert Downey Jr. was like done with it, I guess. But I just think like Hollywood sometimes does this thing where you like doctor stuff or do stuff where I'm kind of like stop. Like, we don't need fake women power stuff. Stop forcing fake, like, there's real stories of it. Like, there's real stories of women empowerment. There's real stuff. Why don't we use the real stuff? Why are you using fake stuff or twisting things to force things in weird ways? I don't get what the point of that is, because then it falls flat. And then also we've heard a lot of stuff on the news, right, of Black, African Americans being upset, or white people being like, well, Africa had slaves, so like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the big deal? I'm like, okay, there's a lot of nuances there. There's a lot of nuances, but it's that idea where it's funny because like Black Americans being like, oh, like, we're upset because we found out that Africa had slaves or whatever, but then we're cool with a movie about people that kept slaves, but we didn't tell that story. We don't know that story, so it's okay. Like, if you could follow what I'm saying, so it's like, it's silly. Like, it's silly because then when you find out at the store that the Dahomey actually did keep slaves, actually they did slave, and actually they were doing slave trade. I really urge people to like look. I'll probably put links of what we looked at of like the Dahomey history, because like they literally kept slaves and they're in the slave trade, and literally I think it was the French, I think, that had to end up cutting them off. Like, they told them to stop and they wouldn't stop. Like, that's actually the truth there. And they were brutal. Like, it wasn't some, oh, we're heroes, this is a fun time, oh my God, kumbaya. No, it was really brutal and like not okay. And even though, yes, there was strength with them, but like they did horrible things. And it's like, you don't want to tell that story, okay, but like, another story you could have told is maybe the movie could have just been about the training. Maybe the movie could have just been about, how do you become warriors? Where do warriors come from? What are their stories? How did Azogi get there? Excuse me. How did Naniska, Viola Davis's character, get there? How did all of them become this like united front? And the story of like what, how did the king of Dahomey, or the Doji, how did it or the Abomi, I think is another word for it. How did they grow? How did it become that? What was the reason for that? Why do they feel they had to participate in the slave trade? Why did they all agree with doing that? Was there another reason? There's so many nuances and things to different stuff. And I feel like you could have written that movie as opposed to like, oh, this is about like, oh, there's some strong women here, so let's just make this about like female and and I think there's too much performative stuff, not only in this movie, but a lot of this like feminism stuff. And I think we discussed this in an earlier episode where Dag and I we don't see ourselves as feminists, because the word and the definition of feminism has been warped and changed, and it's like not, it's like it's like doing, it's almost like using things to do bad stuff, right? Like, oh, we're like, oh, we're just like kicking these cats, but it's fine because feminism, like, that's to make like a dumb metaphor, but it's like you can use real stuff, right? You could really, because it's true with the Zogi thing, when she went back, like, they're not supposed to do that. Like, when they're in danger, they're supposed to run. You're not supposed to stop and save people. That's not what you do. They know that. And yet Zogi like went against. It's almost like with all of her training, we forgot the training because of how much she cares about the Nawe, the main girl. Because like, if she didn't go back, maybe Nawe would have ended up killed. Do you know what I mean? So it's that kind of, so that moment of like, oh crap, like, I can't do my usual warrior stuff because I have to save this girl, even though like you're not supposed to do that. Like, you've been training forever. You're not supposed to go back, but And also, how did Azogi end up in the cage? Like, how did she end up in the cage? How did her arm get broken? I need information, guys. We need information. We can't just make stuff, So, I think maybe if they made the movie more about just how Dahomey grew, and like, if you don't want to mention the slave trade stuff, then like maybe they can be, but don't make them into these like heroes, because they made it seem as if like, oh my God, we're totally against the slave trade and we're not in that, and like how dare they make us like all this stuff. And I just kind of, and then they made it seem as if like we don't want to have slaves, and I'm like, the history is like you guys were literally in that, like you were in it, like you know what I mean, like it's just like, because, and then with the history I learned about, like you could have just talked about how the kingdom grew, because it was like a highly like centralized, strict like military culture, um and it was a way to expand borders of their kingdom, which a lot of kingdoms did that. They would do shady stuff because they want to expand their kingdom, right? So there's a reason behind it. We all know there's nuances and money to be made and things going on with the slave trade. It's not a simple black and white, excuse the pun, situation. And this isn't a Disney story. This isn't like, why are we making? Which is funny because like it kind of gives me Pocahontas, but even Pocahontas, Disney is not the real story. Like even that, they took creative license to make it into, oh, this love story and John and Pocahontas. They weren't even a thing. Like in real life, they weren't even a thing. Like bros, like let's go, or like Avatar, where it's that same thing of like, oh, this random person that comes outside, comes back, and everybody dies, but we're in love, so it's fine. Okay, okay, I mean, I will say that I think it was good that, I mean, it made sense, but how Nawe, like there was a moment I think at the end where she saw Malik, and there was a moment where it was like, you choose Malik or you choose the Dahomey, and she decided to go with the Dahomey. Like that's kind of what that was, because she knows Malik is lost, but Nawe knows where her bread is buttered. You know what I mean? Like she kind of, and now that she knows who her mom is, it kind of builds. And I don't know. And I'm still also like, is she going to get pregnant? Like, or did they, whatever equivalent of protection then did they use it? I don't know, right? And if she does get pregnant, what does that mean? And where's Malik go? Is he going to go back to Portugal and just act like it's fine, like yeah, or is he just gonna like go back? So yeah, I think that hearing about it, and then now that I know more of the history, and I encourage people to go look at it, I mean it's brutal, but it's good to know, right? But like the stuff they I don't know, you like when you're looking at the interviews, the actors and all of them have always been trained to say what they have to, but they talk about the movie and like in a way where it's like, oh yeah, it's female empowerment and like so strong and heroes and all that stuff. And I'm like, I mean, I like that at least they did, it wasn't just Black Americans they used in the film, right? They used like Black Americans, someone from South Africa, Uganda, England, and I remember in some of the interviews, the guy that plays, I don't remember the name of the guy. He was like the king, I think. I've forgotten his name though. The main guy, who also is British, but he was trying to do, I don't know what kind of accent he was trying to do, but anyway, he talked about how he felt like the strength of having so many women around him. Like he was like, and then even on days that he didn't have to be there, he wanted to be there to see the work they were putting in. And I do applaud them because they talked about how they did their own stunts. Like they did that. Like they did training. Even the director was in on it because she didn't want to leave them hanging. Yeah, Viola Davis, all of them were talking about doing the training. And even Viola Davis talked about like first having some misgivings about it, because a lot of times women, like we don't want, like society tells us we're not supposed to be strong and muscular and all this stuff. But as she did it, they felt power from becoming so strong and being able to do these stunts. So clearly there's like a bond with the cast. So that's good. And like doing that, because they really did that stuff. They put the work in 100%. So I'm not saying they didn't put it in. I just feel like the angle of the movie could have been more honest, or could have been like other parts of it could have been used to make it the movie that you want, as opposed to like you don't have to do fake stuff or flat stuff to show female empowerment. Just show real female empowerment. Like it's not like, because then it's like the crying wolf thing. That's what it looks like. We're like, oh, there's a problem here, but there's not. Or this is what we're doing, but and like doing things just because they look cool or just because it sounds cool. Like I don't know. I think is it damaging to do? I feel like, I mean, yeah, you could do whatever you want with your movie, I guess. You have creative license, I suppose, but like, I don't know. It leaves a slight bitter or sweet, like a slight taste in my mouth, because I'm like, it, you think the movie is one thing, and then you find out the truth, and you're just like, oh, this is not exactly what I thought it was. So yeah, I don't know, and I'm not sure what. I mean, hopefully we get more movies with more, actual female empowerment, and like stuff gets made and things like that. But yeah, and I think I'd be curious to hear people's thoughts on it, because I kind of want to hear what African Americans think and Africans think when they don't know the history versus when they do, to see what, we didn't do as much research in that. But I do urge people to look up, if you want to actually know what happened with the Dahomey and stuff, to see what it was about. Because yeah, but also I will say that at least the warrior thing was true. Like, there were women who were actually, because people tend to think it's like, oh, just women were in power and or men were in power and women were just at home. Like, no, like women and men both did different things, right? Or even in slavery, like, people tend to think that like all Black people were with slave, but like we were doing other things. Like, it's not just slavery and then nothing, like Black people didn't do anything else. Or like, I guess what I'm saying is that not every Black person was a slave and not every white person was a slave owner. You know what I mean? Like, there are different stuff going on. And I think there's nuances, and there were different types of women and like different types of kingdoms, and like it's not, as a pun I keep using, it's not black and white. And I think it, like, history and truth itself is fascinating. It's interesting. And like, I think we have like, you don't have to make a fantasy about stuff to get what you are trying to show, right? You can use like more real facts to tell your story. And I do think that, yes, Hollywood sometimes does have this issue of like twisting things and like making, like you had said, to fit their own like narrative. And you're like twisting a story to make something, as opposed to just like using a real one, like, and it makes me think of, I think I brought this up before. It was like, I think it was an X-Men episode or something, where like it was like X-Men Evolution, or I don't know what, and it was something like how like Mystique was doing all this like cool stuff as a woman or something. I think we talked about it in another episode, and there was a scene with like Jean Grey and like some other women, and they were doing some stupid stuff to get to like the Cyclops and the other guys, or it was just like a fake feminist thing. But then I'm like, the person I actually thought was interesting was Mystique, because Mystique was like cool and collected and smart and intelligent and knew what to do and didn't have to make a huge big deal about it. And I think what we're having is like this issue in society of this, like, we have like the real feminism stuff and then the kind of fake feminism or like performative feminism that gets like blurred and mixed up. And I don't know if that helps us to blur the lines of the truth, kind of thing. Sounds like some kind of title of some book. So I that's the issue I have with it, where it's okay, it's fine if people took good things from it, it's fine. But you didn't have to, like, I don't using creative license like this. Is this really necessary? Does this really help us? Especially when like you're not even not everything in the movie was focused on properly, as well, right? And I think they could have done more. The movie by itself, it's fine. Most of it, like, you have the action, the warriors, like on a more surface level, it's great, and there's some good lines, and we see the power, and there is some, like, we see the complexity of Nawe and complexity of Naniska and the struggle, and we see what and seeing what Naniska went through was very raw. Like, it was really, like, they didn't put that under the rug. That was like a big deal. However, that's another plot whole issue I have, is like when she finds the man that did what he did to her, like, I don't even think he remembers her. Like, she's all freaking out. I'm like, why don't you tell him who, like, I don't, like, he doesn't even know, like, he's just there, like, oh, and I'm like, he's only concerned with the slave trade stuff. And I'm like, I thought he should know what he did. Like, like, what the hell, what is this? And I think that was kind of sad, where like, but I don't know if he ends up, does she kill him in the end? I've forgotten if she, like, yeah, she does kill him. So at least that is dealt with, kind of thing. But I still think, yeah, we could have done there were some relationship and bond issues that could have worked better. I mean, I think for the most of the acting was quite good. I will say that the acting was good. I felt the acting, with especially the main cast, I will say they did a good job there. And yeah, but I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I wonder what kind of movie this would be if there's more truth to it, or they kind of went in a different direction, or they made it more about like just the warriors becoming warriors. And yeah, so that's what I'll say
Nice.
about that, I think.
Yes, no. And as we bring it all in, yes.
Yeah.
And I do agree that in terms of casting, they did try in terms of there was a mixture of Africans and Black Americans in it.
Yes, there's a mixture.
Yes, the actor who was the king, his name's John Boyega, who is, yes, British by way of Nigeria or Nigerian, but based in England. Yeah. And who is quite a solid actor in terms of, I've noted every role I see him in, he really becomes the character. You don't see him in each of them, kind of thing. I do take note though that there were so many different accents though. Like everyone was trying to do an accent that didn't necessarily, which I don't know if that is something that can be difficult doing African historical films. Because what was the accent before colonization? What was the accent before the borders were created? Now it's very easy to be like, okay, do an African accent and it ends up automatically sounding just Nigerian or just South African. And then that's it. If where the Dahomey was, which technically is parts of Benin, I'm not sure if Nigeria is involved in that area or that region too, what was their accent prior to having to learn how to speak Portuguese, speak Dutch, speak English, because you're trading with all these different people. So that's where sometimes, even though I get the criticism of like Hollywood, just stop because y'all never get the accent right. But it's true that I do believe African accents have evolved over time due to the different influences and experiences that have occurred. So I did note that every main character, the African accent was completely different. So it sometimes didn't even sound they're from the same region when they're supposed to be. So that was a little, including even John Boyega, where sometimes it was like, it sounded a little more Nigerian and then sometimes tried to sound more like this other thing. Yeah. One more, I know we're bringing it all in, but we didn't yet to mention, remember the character that was supposed to be the king's ADC? Who was a man,
right. That was a big deal too.
You know, always wearing some kind of like beautiful fabric. And even though he had the ear of the king and always knew stuff, where did he come from? Who is he? What is his story? Is he fluid in gender? Exactly. Whereas like he must have had quite a big prominent role in the kingdom if you're the one who can just talk to the different wives anyhow, and then you can speak to the king anyhow either. It's like you must be a very important person in this kingdom. But why are you always wearing like a semi-dress? Like, what is this supposed to symbolize?
Who are you?
Who are you? How did you get there? What are you trying to symbolize with it? Because you casted this person and having him act and having mannerisms that are very different from any other man in the film. What was the reason for that? Or we're just not going to talk about it? Like, what was the point? What is the point of having him like that? Because it wasn't like he's trying to be funny. This is really just who he is, and he's very serious about it. But you also tried to make him a bit sassy. So what was the reason for him being that? You know? And then again, I was like, is this another Hollywood thing of you always need to have some kind of, and again, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful. I'm not saying this to demote or demean anyone's experience. But unfortunately, when Hollywood wants to do token things, before it was a token Black person. Now it's a token, maybe they're queer, maybe they're not. Maybe they're fluid, maybe they're not. And unfortunately, if you didn't bring up this man's story, why he's there, what's his role, why is he acting this way? And just as if we're just all supposed to take it as is, it unfortunately gives the vibe of like, was this just a token? You need to throw a little bit of that sassiness in there. How did it move the story? How did it move anything for the character? It didn't, unfortunately. And then again, it's like that's then fake alliance or fake advocacy for issues that are real, you know? Because then it's like, if you want to do that, then you should have done real research on, so in the kingdom, were there people there who were fluid in gender? And what did that mean? And what was their role? And how were they treated? Well, then put that in the story. Don't just have somebody being sassy walking around and then we're just supposed to take it as like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? So yes. So to bring that all together, yes, this is one, I feel like the movie was had. It was a time. And I don't think, we're not saying like it should have never happened. It's fine that it happened. And this is maybe a progression of like the next level of what kind of movies we can do. I think because I think it's a good step, you know? We just gotta make sure we're in a step in the right direction. If you get the funding and the resources to put together an amazing film, and you're choosing to do touchy subjects like history, because history is touchy for everybody in every part of the world. This one was African history, but if you want to move on to Brazil history, Japanese history, Mexican history, everybody got skeletons in their closet that they do not want to talk about, right? So if you want to insist that you want a movie to bring out those skeletons, bring out the dirty laundry, then you got to go all in. You got to go all in. Don't just stay on the surface, because I feel like as filmmakers, you really hold a serious responsibility, because for some people, this is their introduction to a part of possibly their own story they didn't know. And when you choose to use that as the basis for just surface level entertainment, I feel like you possibly then influence whole generations to never really know the truth of their own story. And that's unfortunate, but it is a big deal. And since we can note that those sorts of things don't happen to certain parts of history. So when I'm not sure if any movie about the Holocaust has ever taken their story and made it some surface level entertainment. I don't think so.
Yeah, imagine doing that for that's what I'm saying. Like
it will be taken very seriously, very respectfully. You make sure you cross those T's, dot those I's. Every aspect of it needs to be told in the way that demographic wants it to be told.
You made it like you changed the story. You're like, yeah, Hitler didn't do anything. He was actually a hippie.
Exactly. No one would allow that. Nobody would allow that. And we understand why. So when you get the opportunity and you decide that you want to take history from demographics that don't get respected at that level, and I'm not, and again, I'm trying to reiterate or make it or amplify or emphasize that it's not just African history that has that. There's a lot of Latin American history that's never told properly. There's a lot of Asian history that's never told properly. There's a lot of Pacific Island, Caribbean, Native American history still has not been told properly. When you get that opportunity and you get the funding and the sponsorship and the resources to tell it, like that is your responsibility because this might be the only time this story is told. So I just feel like when the stakes are that high, all right, make the entertainment, try and balance the entertainment factor without sacrificing the truth and the story. Because for a lot of these demographics, this one movie may be the only movie we get about Dahomey for a while. So that's something to not take lightly. So I'm not saying don't do these kind of films. I'm not saying the effort that was put into it is a loss. No, we've seen, as we noted in this episode, the effort, the training, the research, y'all did that. The money it probably took, because it was a quality film. The money it took to produce that, we applaud you, we give you credit and everything. We're just saying that moving forward, films like this, when we want to take on history that has been marginalized, destroyed, and erased, we need to, it's a practice in understanding that villains and heroes are not cut and dry the way Hollywood and Disney wants us to believe. And we should be getting to a point where we can accept that some people who look like us, maybe were not the characters we would have wanted them to be. That's still part of our story. I don't think it insults our ancestors to let us know that this is what our history was. This is the truth of how some of us were acting in certain parts of the world and in certain time periods. And I feel it would benefit us more to get that better understanding so that we know moving forward what we want heroes and villains to be now and in the future.
Yeah, it's a bit disingenuous because we're always complaining about our history here being the slate, things being whitewashed. But then you have a bunch of Black people that make a film and then you wash, what would it be called? Blackwash? I don't know. We do, you know what I mean? It's we're always complaining about people messing up our history to make it seem like something else happened, but then we do it too. So I'm I don't understand. So then it's an America thing then, where we're just or America Hollywood thing where we just kind of wash away I just feel like it's not, I mean, and also you could have even talked about Nawe and her whole family thing. Maybe just focus on that, or what happened to Azogi. Like, how did Azogi get there, right? How did Niska get there, and so yeah, because I don't know. I mean, I guess we don't have to go too much. This isn't a history lesson of the Dahomey. So, but yeah, the Dahomey were actually, like, I think it was for 300 years. I think that they were in the Atlantic slave trade. And then I think it was only until the French, I think, they had to put like a naval blockade, I think, on them because they wanted to keep on doing the trade. And yeah, so there's a lot of history about that, and people went and talked about like what was going on here when they were, the kingdom that they were. And I think that, yeah, it's like, I don't think it's okay, but oh yeah, we don't want to tell the truth, because I don't know, like, why didn't they tell the truth? Was it because they had an issue with the truth, or was it because, well, I want to make this type of movie, so I don't care? Like, I don't know what went into it, because maybe it's not like a lethal thing. They just kind of want, like, I just like that the warriors were badass, and I wanted to make a warrior badass story. What's the big deal? And I'm like, okay, but there are other warrior badass stories. Like, you could have found other ones and have more truth in them, And so yeah, so overall, I see what they're trying to do. I mean, I will say it's like there were good parts, there were emotional parts, I understand what that was, but I think we could do better. We could do better. We could do a bit more research and uncovering things, and and it makes me think of all the other stories that have not been uncovered, like all the other things that we don't know because they're kind of like, you don't learn about it in history class, kind of thing. And so and if it made people look up the history themselves, then that's good, right? Because then they'll know more and it'll add another layer. And it was and there's stuff out there about it. Like, there's videos where they talk about it, and there's like Lupita Nyong'o that talks about, and all this stuff. So the information is out there. But yeah, I think we could do things could be more full. Like, we can do full. I don't know why we always think we have to do like sort of do the thing, but it's like surface, but not really. But it is. It's like, I don't think we need to do that. Like, I think we can be more full about it. Like, it makes me think of like the Hidden Figures, where, like, I mean, yeah, there were some bad things in the film, but like you can talk about bad things, like bad things happening doesn't negate from the strength of the person, because like the warriors were doing bad stuff, the Dahomey were doing like horrible stuff, but they were still like powerful. They still like trained to do that. I'm sure there was still a sisterhood type thing, even if they were doing like messed up stuff. But it doesn't take away from the strength. It just tells us, okay, this is the story that happened. And like, and maybe for them, and maybe going over why they felt they had to do that, like, were they pushed, like, what was the reason, as they would say. And I also would like to bring up, I think I brought it up briefly, about the different women in this movie, because like there's also the wives, right? And how they had a different role to play with the king. There were the wives, and then there was Viola Davis's people, right? And how, like, notice how like the women acted differently, and how they dressed differently, how they had different roles, and how like the wives also had a strength, but like in a different way. So I will say that even though it could have been is extrapolate, the SAT word I want to use, I guess it would be extrapolated on, sound all smart. But how seeing women in different ways, like, we're not just one way, right? We can act differently, and like, we're not just like one-sided kind of thing. Because you see the way, if you compare how his main wife acted versus how Viola Davis acted, and it was a very different situation, right? So yeah, and again, what about the wives? I want to know more about them. Like, why are they there? What's going on? Like, why, and how do they, stuff like that. But yeah, so I don't know, in the future, will this make more movies come out? Will we have more truth coming out? Will more things be, we'll see. But yeah, that was kind of we had a lot of gripes about it, but for some reason we never did a podcast episode on, I don't know why. But yeah, so we had a lot of things. So it'd be cool to hear what you guys have to say about it. And I think we'll put like the links. I think Dagny will put the links up about all the history we did. It's interesting to hear about it. And yeah, and now I kind of want to watch the movie again, like, to kind of see that, now that I know everything, to see if it'll be like a different thing. But yeah, it was interesting. Definitely interesting watch. And
so Great conversation. And yes, you listening, please, we love hearing from you. So if you did watch Woman King and you also had some insight and feedback, what were your thoughts on it? The things that we brought up in this episode, did you also think of this? Do you have anything else to add or any other holes you might have found some research or history on to fill it in? Let us know, comment wherever you are listening to us, and we can continue the conversation. We will see you, hear from you, catch you on the next episode.
Yep. Be loved and blessed. Bye.
Bye. Take care.